few of us that will benefit from the coaching.
I try to help.
Are we up?
Yeah, Justin says we're watching.
According to the director of law, we're on.
I don't see it, but I'll take his word for it.
All right, yeah. If Justin says we're up and going, we're good with that. I'd like to call tonight's Norton City Council regular council meeting to order Monday, January 22nd, 2018. Time is 7:03 p.m. Before we start tonight's meeting, I would just like to make an announcement and remember or pay tribute to two members of our community that passed away in the last few weeks here. Both extraordinary men that have done so much for the community, one being Charlie Lemon, just recently passed away. He was a former council member. He volunteered so much of his time to so many different organizations. Even received an award from President Ronald Reagan at one point in time. A very special individual. Very sorry and saddened that he is no longer with us. The second individual is Dwayne Huff. Him and his brother own Fred Martin, and they do so much for the city of Norton. And very sad, very early in life that he passed away. So I would ask that you guys keep their families in your thoughts and prayers through this tough time. If everybody would please stand for Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silent prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You call the roll, please.
Mr. Gaynor?
Here.
Mr. McGlone?
Here.
Ms. Whipke?
Here.
Dan Krant?
Here.
Mr. Tasley?
Here.
Mr. Kernan?
Here.
Mr. Pilot?
Here. Tonight under Committee of the Whole, we have purchase of a service department dump truck. Mr. Krant?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to have the ordinance 2-2018 for a first reading.
No, this basically is just to kind of introduce it at this point, discuss it.
Okay. So
You
that's
can turn it over to Mr. Fowler if you want, and he can explain the cost and the need for the truck, if you like.
sure. That's fine. We had 78 pages of explanation, so if you can boil that down to a little less, that'd be great.
I'll try to be as concise as possible. And, one thing we've discussed, especially during the budget cycle, was the significant issues within our fleet at the service garage. We budgeted for 2 vehicles. One is operational at this point. We have it at the service garage should an event happen. But prior to that, we only had 3 vehicles in service at one point. Fortunately, we got a 4th up and operational before the last snow event. Because of that situation, we're looking to purchase a second vehicle, a little bit larger than the normal size vehicle. This is a tandem axle vehicle. It holds between 7 and 10 tons. It'll provide us some flexibility in our operation. It comes fully equipped for snowplow, ice and snow control. Comes with actually 2 plows, one on the main cab, one wing plow, which will be installed on the dump bed. If you've seen the ODOT trucks, typically trucks that ODOT's operating is a tandem with a wing plow. It'll also have a V-box spreader, which will auger the salt out rather than having to raise the bed. If you recall, last meeting we had 2 weeks ago, we had a truck up on Loyal Oak that the hydraulics were frozen. So we're looking to adjust our fleet accordingly, and this vehicle will give us that ability. It will also reduce our need for paying for delivery of material, for which we currently outsource. We'll be using this vehicle to pick up various materials in the street department.
And if I may, one of the other items that we discussed under Board of Control is, a lot of our side streets aren't necessarily all that wide, so this truck may be able to do the side streets in one plow, one direction, thus reducing the overall amount of time and road miles that go on each truck.
We will be evaluating our snowplow routes once we adjust our fleet here.
And then I had gone down to the service garage last week, and I was talking with Larry Hess, and the condition of the trucks and stuff. I was looking to maybe try to, stagger the purchases some, considering we had just purchased a truck. But when I went down there and saw the condition of our trucks, I was actually very embarrassed that we hadn't kept up on a kind of systematic rotation of our vehicle and equipment. And I know Mr. Flower is going to be working on that and implementing a replacement policy on our equipment, so we don't run into the same issues in the future. Some of our trucks, well, one of them dates back to, I believe he said it was a 97. A couple others are like a 2000. We have one newer vehicle, dump truck, which is, I believe, a 2013. So it's definitely needed. There was more oil on the ground underneath the one that was up on the racks. I mean, looked like he was doing an oil change, and that's not what he was doing at that point in time. So definitely a severe need for this vehicle, and it has been budgeted for. So,
if I may, what's the timeline on getting this passed by council, and then delivery time and all of that? What are we looking at?
I mean, Mr. Pelot and I had this conversation, and I don't know that if we can get a first read and then a second read, we would like it as soon as possible. But it's available, and once we get approval from council, probably a week or so to get it in.
I guess my concern is that we're at January 22nd. If we go through 3 readings, we're at the end of February, and by the time we get it, we're in the middle of March. So, I mean, it's almost at that point.
Understand that.
It seems to me that because even though it was 57 degrees or something today, that's not going to last. So maybe if we could do 1 reading and then have a second wave the third, and get that rolling with that. I don't know what council thinks about that, but
I have no problem with that, as long as it was budgeted. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Could I?
Yes.
Mr. Hess does feel that this is a truck that he wants or thinks it will work for his necessity, right? It's what he
Correct.
wants. And he also feels, hope, that the price is what he thinks is reasonable for that type of vehicle and the equipment that's included.
Correct.
And we have 3 quotes, and of the 3
And
quotes,
I will get those. I have a Volvo quote and another quote. I will get
Good.
those to council
Oh, I
before
need
the
to
next
know.
meeting.
If he's happy
Excuse
with
me,
it.
are you done, Mr. McClone? Or Mr. Gaynor?
Yes, I'm
Okay. I had a question. I was curious. If I understood correctly, you say that the bed doesn't raise?
It raises.
Okay.
In order to do the salt application, we're going to a different system. The current system that we implement in the city requires the bed to elevate
Right.
to move the salt.
Understand.
The system we will be implementing, I'll just draw a quick picture here if I can find something. Essentially,
You don't have to
it's
explain the
okay.
spreader to
It'll
me.
be shaped like this. It'll have an auger in which will
Right.
evacuate the salt, which won't require the bed to raise in order to distribute the salt.
Okay, I thought it didn't raise at all, and my real question
Right, no,
would have been,
just-
how is it going to be useful
Right,
for picking material?
No, that's a
I
great
got it.
question. No.
It does have hydraulics.
yes.
It will,
Okay.
you can use it as a dump truck,
As a dump truck, correct.
like in the summertime for materials and such.
Right, okay, thank
The
you.
wintertime, we're using a
So
different.
it doesn't freeze.
But for salt application, it won't require the bed to elevate, correct. So we don't have to worry about the piston freezing. And
Yeah, I'm really not quite that ignorant.
I do have a question, if I can. You mentioned that it's going to have a wing plow on the back.
on the dump bed.
How long has this technology been around, do you know? And I guess the reason I asked that question, does that cause further maintenance and/or damage to the machine? I'm not against it, I just want to make sure that we're covering all aspects.
In terms of,
Well, if it sticks out to the side, there's wear and tear. In my head, when I heard it was a wing, I thought it was on the front, and I was worried about the front end of the vehicle getting wear and tear. Is there any such wear and tear on the rear of the vehicle? No.
well, it's actually on the side. So on the side of the truck,
Comes that
The thing
drawing.
is,
and it
ODOT,
drops down,
yeah.
and it's an extra 10 feet. So it'll give us 22 feet of plowing wingspan.
What ODOT has on
It's
it.
what ODOT uses. It just drops down beside. Essentially, it's a hydraulic arm that drops it down, much like the one in the front. And it won't be.
So it's not attached to the frame of the vehicle or the vehicle. It's more. Is it attached to the
Attached to
bed?
the dump. It swings down
dump.
from the dump
Okay.
bed, and it gives you about 22 feet.
I guess my question is the reliability been proven out in the past?
ODOT's been using them for quite some time,
Okay.
so I've been relying kind of, one of the reasons we went with this model was, this type of truck was the ODOT. They're running tandem axles with the V-Box spreader. And
Okay, thank you.
Just kind of planning ahead, as Cleveland Masson Road's widening, 76 is widening, this is going to definitely improve our ability to clear those roads a little faster. Any other discussion on this? Mr. Grant, if you
Moving to the agenda.
want to move to add it.
I would move to add this to the agenda for tonight.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Courant,
Yes.
Mr. Towesley,
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor.
Yes.
And that'll be for a first reading only, or
Yes.
okay.
What ordinance number would that be?
Adam.
It wasn't on the, it just is blank.
2, isn't it?
2, I believe.
It's
isn't it?
2?
That
Yeah.
one should be 2.
Okay.
We've only had one
Thank
so
you.
far. One second. Next item on tonight's agenda is the Brookside Little and Shellhart. Looking at the fringe area of Nash Heights there and trying to kind of complete that area with sewer coverage and give us the ability to finish finish paving all the roads in that vicinity versus going ahead and paving a road just to end up tearing it up in the future to lay sewer pipe. Makes good sense to kind of address this issue now and see if we don't want to kind of complete this area, and then that takes that whole quadrant of the city and finalizes it with sewers, finalizes the paving through there. Mr. Flower, if you want to
No,
add
you're
some.
fine. So what, if you, to go to the easiest explanation is on the back of the cover sheet. I prepared a small little spreadsheet for you to review. Option A is we do nothing, and that means that Little Boulevard from Shellhart to the cul-de-sac remains in the current state. Brookside the same, Shellhart the same, and that's from Brookside to Easton. Option B is strictly paving, and I received a slightly lower estimate than on Shellhart. It's about $47,000 now, so it came down about $12,000. So if we were just to do paving on those three streets, we'd be at about $114,000. That would be general fund contribution because the project would not be able to cover that. I did submit some costs from the engineer based on the quantities that were submitted in accordance with the bid for the project, and that's item C. I believe I also included the specifications for running sewer lines to both Little and Brookside. I know we've had many a conversation about what we're going to do. We do have two connections on Little. A lady has, there are two people or two locations on Little which want to purchase their sewer connection now, which totals about almost $23,000. So the question is, how do we address? We sent them fringe letters, and now they have asked to be included. I'm just looking for a decision from council how we wish to proceed.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Have the residents been contacted on either of these streets?
We sent the fringe letter.
Like on Little and Brookside, did everybody on those streets get the fringe letter?
Yes.
They did?
Yes.
So you've had two people want to, out of
Yes.
how many are back there approximately? 9?
3, 6, 7. Well, parcels, though, we're not.
Yeah, I'm not even counting.
I counted 9 residences, if that's correct.
Between Little and Brookside?
Little, Brookside, and a question about the one on Shellhart.
And Shellhart's only going to be paving, just so we're clear. The project area does not cover Shellhart from Easton to Brookside. So there's that small little area that will be left unpaved compared to the rest. The running of the lines would not require connection.
So does that mean those residents aren't going to be assessed?
Correct.
Until they tap in.
Remember, we set forth that schedule, the schedule, the accelerated schedule for their tap in. So they have until July 1st to decide if they wanted to tap in, and then it starts to increase.
That includes everybody on those streets?
Yes, sir.
Because from my understanding, the fringe was just people who had lines going in front of their home that could tap in, not homes beyond that.
And we sent letters to all of those residents because they are on the fringe of the project. Is how I understood.
As long as I know they
got
that, that's not my understanding of the fringe.
They did. And that's how I found out the lady on Little. There were two connections on Little that sought the sewer. That's how, because I sent them the.
Where are they located?
On Little, in the cul-de-sac.
At the very end of it?
Yes.
On the west side.
You done, Charlotte? If I could. I've got 2 or 3 questions here. I'll sort of take them quickly, one at a time. The first one you've answered, and you said there's only 2 homes on Little, Brookside, or Shellhart that want to connect at this time.
And just so we're clear, we're not running a sewer on Shellhart at any location. The Shellhart is
That's the other-
strictly a pavement,
That's the other one of the
strictly
other questions.
pavement on Shellhart.
Okay, no sewers being ran, only
None.
on Little and Brookside cul-de-sacs.
Yes. And I should have, and you should, hopefully you have a map that kind of
I do.
indicates.
I do.
Okay.
I just have a black line on the map.
Well, and I apologize, it's primitive,
just-
it's
it
best I
doesn't
could do.
It doesn't say sewer or blacktop or.
Yeah,
But anyway, so there's only two I'm going to write down here that's already decided to connect, and out of those two people who've decided to connect, are they? Did they respond at the proper time to be included, so they can put it on their taxes?
no.
No.
And just, Mr. Gannon, I don't know if you recall, we had many discussions in October
Yeah.
relating to the project. And when we sent the fringe letters, we even had that discussion, correct me if I'm wrong, Charlotte, we had the discussion about the assessment in that letter, because the original draft, we had said that we would do that. And one of the discussions we had here, I believe, was we didn't feel they had that opportunity to get in, and therefore, because they chose not to get in the project at that time, we weren't allowing the assessment to the taxes. If I'm mistaken, please remind me. But I thought we had that discussion.
I think what Mr. Gaynor's asking, did the people that saying they want in now say no earlier?
Yes. Well, obviously they did, because they're not part of the project area.
Okay, so
They would pay a fee
up front.
Right.
Okay, that was.
At the amount.
That's my next question is, I'm sorry,
Oh,
Scott,
you're
I
fine.
didn't mean to interrupt you there. My next question was, how much will each homeowner pay to be connected? Those two people that are on Little, how much are they gonna pay, and how?
So if they connect by July 1st,
Yeah,
they have to be connected by July 1st.
Right.
It's 23,000. It's 11,500 times 2. So it'd be 23,000 total. Now that does not include the $800 for Barberton and the tap-in charge that will be reduced, considering,
That's just the assessment that would have been
that's
on the
just
taxes.
for the project
Right.
cost,
That's
yes.
still the first year, then after the first year, remember. it's
Goes
supposed
up
to go
$500.
All right, so we're giving them the same assessment that somebody like on Cleveland Maslin Road received, 11.5, and then 500 increment.
Correct.
Increase.
And that
so on and
ordinance
so
was
forth.
passed, that's a tap-in ordinance the council passed in October stipulating those terms.
But those were for the fringe areas, not for adding a sewer line above and beyond.
But these were considered the fringe area.
But see, this is where I'm stumbling. How can you be on the fringe area if you don't have a line in front of your house? How can you be given an option to connect?
Good question.
Exactly.
Yep.
The fringe people, I believe some of us understood it anyway, were the people that actually had a line
Right.
in front of their house, but they weren't mandated.
Right.
It was available, but they didn't have to do it, like everybody on the south side, basically, of Greenwich.
Yeah.
Everybody on the north side of Shellhart. Or if you were on a corner, or if you were like at the very end of maybe Easton.
So what we're saying is who pays for the sewer line from Shellhart all the way to the cul-de-sac on Little
That was my next question.
And Brookside.
and Brookside?
That's in addition to what we've already agreed to put in.
So here, I asked Justin for his definition of the fringe. And he says those people were considered a fringe originally, meaning that the people in these streets were considered the fringe.
And they all wanted out, and we wrote them out.
So if I might just jump in, and my understanding was the same thing. Fringe meant that there was a line that was already there, but they weren't mandated to hook in. We said, but you can hook in at the 11.5 or whatever it was, and we set up that whole schedule and everything. Now, my concern becomes two things. The first concern I have is that when we started this project, we told people we're not going to run lines down your streets unless it's necessary, unless there's, an EPA mandate or something like that. So I get a little uncomfortable about that because I do know that we have a process within our code for people to request lines, and I think it's got to be 2/3 of the residents or something like that. Maybe that's for water, maybe it's for sewer, maybe it's for both, I don't know. But we have that process to do that. And I'm more comfortable with that if like a super majority of people say on the street we want sewer, and we say, okay, we're going to put sewer in, and we go ahead and do that, and then we assess that separately or we figure that out separately. My concern is we run these lines down this road, and I was just looking at the map, and I don't know how many people, let's take Shellhart or Little, for instance. I don't know how many people are on that street, but that's a long run with few houses, as I recall. So the question then becomes does the 11.5 really work for that? I think that's something we need to look at, is whether or not that number works for that particular project. I don't know that we have bound ourselves in the future for every project that everybody's going to be paying 11.5. It depends on the area. If there's more people in a concentrated area, my guess is that more people mean that the assessment might be lower. I don't know. It may not work out that way, but it's something we have to look at. I don't know.
Go ahead.
So that first concern is about what we talked about when we first started this project. I remember people coming in down Golf Course Drive and being concerned that they were going to get lines up there and there were going to be lines here and here and here. Listen, I don't have a problem with running sewer lines. I think we need sewers in this city. However, I also think that there needs to be more discussion about this, and I think people have to be better informed. I understand they got the letters, and they should. I don't know, and I can't remember what the letter said at this point. I'm not so sure that letter said, we might be thinking about running a line down your street. And so I think that they need to know that. And then we need to take a look at this thing. Paving, I don't necessarily have a problem with paving a road. My concern comes when we're starting to look at running more lines at different places, and I think people just need to know about that.
If I could also, I know exactly what Joe's talking about, and that was one of my questions. I also don't have any problems with sewers at all. I'm 100% behind them. I think we should have them everywhere. But my question, which was, how much will a homeowner pay? And if it's answered, 11.5 is what's decided now. And then I said, how much will the city pay for that line that's going down? And I see the figures here. And the way I read your interpretation is 11.5 and 11.5, we're going to be getting $23,000 back. And we're going to be expending, I don't know what the total figure is, quite a bit. $289,000, including paving and everything, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And my only thoughts were that have we actually picked up the phone or the email or something and said to each and every, like Joe was asking how many, there's 5 homes on Little Boulevard, and there's 4 homes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Altogether, there's 9 residences on Little Boulevard and Brookside Boulevard extensions. And then there's one home on Shellhart, north side of Shellhart, between Little and Brookside. And I know they're not running a line there. You're not running a sewer line there, right?
Where at?
Between
The Shellhart Road.
Yeah, there is between Little and Brookside, there's a line that runs right down Shellhart.
Okay, that's what I'm
But
getting
it
at.
stops at Brookside.
there. Okay, that's what I'm
Stops
getting
at-
at.
Okay.
We have a sewer line in place already, already in place, which was in the mandated area. And it runs down the south side of Shellhart, or north, I don't know which, one or the other.
Yeah.
Anyway, it runs by, on Shellhart, it runs past two homes between Brookside and Little on the north side. There's two homes on the north side of Brookside and Shellhart. Or you can say the one is on Brookside. There's a driveway it shows on this map, okay? So anyway, all I'm saying is I think we should, if we haven't already, and I would think that you already have, contacted each and every homeowner and said, do you want to be included in this line? And if all of those homes, except for those two, said, this is in my mind, if they said, no, we do not want to be included in this, then I would say to them, including the two, we're not going to run that sewer line down there at our cost, at the city's cost, unless 50% of you at least hook up to the sewer line. I mean, I want to see the sewer lines ran down there because it's going to increase the value of those homes, and when they sell them, they're going to realize a greater value on their homes. But I think we're spending, truthfully, I think we're spending money just to avoid the fact that we'll have to repave the road if they do it in the future. We're spending money on those sewer lines just for the benefit of those two people. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I don't have any problem at all in putting the sewer lines down there, but I think we should sort of entice those people who are on those streets to hook up.
Well, I think we did that by creating the schedule that
I don't know,
increased the
yeah.
fee. I mean, that's fine. I mean, I guess we're either to the point where we do nothing, we pave, and subsequent result, if someone digs it up next year, then that's what they do. And then, or we do the entire project, which the paving and the sewer lines would be funded by the project cost.
I'm sorry.
That's,
Go ahead, Jack. Go
Real
ahead.
quickly, I want to
go
make
ahead.
sure I've got this straight. You say they will be funded now by the project costs. So
The
we're going to
extension
add,
of the lines, the roughly 289,000, including the 70,000. Again, I'm just using ballpark, $67,000 in paving. So 289,000, 67,000 of that is paving.
understand.
So the whole project cost, the 289, would be funded by the project. It makes no difference. If we're going to do the paving like we did Easton, we kind of need to make a decision here very soon. And we need to, it would be, say it in a nice way, disingenuous to the three streets for us not to spend $114,000 to complete the paving in that area.
Yeah, I get that.
I guess that's the crux of the argument.
No, I get that.
If we do nothing else, I'm asking you to say we should pave the streets. I understand the not extending sewers,
Sure.
but it wouldn't. I've honestly felt that I would be doing you a disservice to just not say, hey, here's an option. And that's okay that we decide that the paving is just what we want.
Is paving these streets part of what we're looking at for the paving program for this year? Or is this in addition?
We can make. I mean, we can.
Well, I
I
just want to know: is it would be in addition, or
It would be an addition right now, but
Okay.
that doesn't mean we can't adjust it.
and so the paving portion alone would come out of the general fund.
Correct.
If we did the sewer lines, that would come out of the I always forget the number.
128.
Project.
148, is that what it is?
128, 127.
Well, actually, it would be part of the project. We'd do a change order, and it would be financed by the project.
That's what I was going to ask next.
Am I correct? Ralph?
So
Yes.
so explain that to me a little bit more.
So, in other words, the $289,000 that the total cost, paving and everything, I believe, and Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we've talked to Barberton. They would be willing to put that in as a change order, so it's part of the loan.
Right.
Which means no money from us. It's paid for, it's taken care of. That's why I believe if we're gonna pave those two streets, it almost makes sense to run the line to those two streets so we don't have to dig it up again because it would all be part of the project.
So let me understand.
After the fact.
So let me understand this. You're saying that we would not be expending the money to run these sewer lines. The city of Norton would not be expending money to run these sewer lines.
That's not true.
It's going to be,
It would be part of the project.
Well, okay.
We'd still be paying for it. We're just not going to have to
Yes, I mean,
pay it
we'll
out
pay it in
front.
the end.
the general fund.
Okay. All right.
Right. And that's,
Okay.
and
And
that's
the
why I put,
payback over the 30 years.
I get
And I
okay.
agree. I don't have any problem with that then. That was my question. I wanted to make certain that the cost of those sewer lines that are going down those two streets are paid for, not out of our,
Part of the project.
right, as part of the project. So I don't have any problem.
Wait. No, that's not true. We are paying for it. We're making payments on that loan.
We'll pay it back through the loan.
We've added another $300,000 on to what it is we have to get for 9 people, which basically it comes up to like over $30,000 per resident,
For 2 people.
roughly. Well, I'm using all 9 of them and dividing it in there because eventually they'll have to pay it. That we're going to be picking up over half of that if we give it. And I understood it was 11.2, not 11.5. I thought 11.5 was after, and it was 11.2 to begin
Yeah,
with.
it was.
And we're going to let them have it for the 11.2 when twice they said, no, we don't want it. And we rewrote our resolution of necessity to do it. They added this more on, and then we're going to pick up more for them than we did the other people or the people up on Cleveland Maslin. And they're asking for it. I have an issue with that. That there needs to be more than just that. I don't have a problem with putting sewers in, but we fought and fought with these people out here on the prices and said we couldn't do any more, we couldn't do any more. We kept put people in, take people out. They had 2 opportunities to get in here. And they could have had an impact on the overall price to begin with and what we could have done with it. And now at the last minute, I'm sorry, I can't see it.
And as I recall, these houses are all fairly new, so I can't imagine that we have any failing septic systems out there.
I know.
We haven't had any reports of that.
I can't speak to that.
And I just want to make sure, just so I know, the letter we sent out to them said that you're in the fringe area and you can connect.
I think what we indicated on the letter was, please let us know if you have an interest by X
Okay.
date, because
Right.
as of July 1st, there's going to be increased
Gotcha.
costs.
Gotcha.
The incentive was monetary. Right.
I'd like to see the listing of the letters that got sent out.
And I suppose, I guess my biggest thing is what I want to know at this point, and I realize that we're working with change orders and we need to have a decision somewhat quickly, but I would like to see these folks contacted and said, the city is contemplating running a sewer line down this road. Do you want it? I mean, I just really want it to be that clear.
Do we have the authority or the option or whatever you want to call it to start with Little and Brookside cul-de-sac, just like we did, only under a mandate from EPA? Can the city not say we're going to run a sewer line down those 2 streets? And there are already 2 people who are interested. And if we run the sewer line down those streets, wouldn't they be required to hook up?
No.
I mean, historically, the health department has taken the stance that the only time a forced connection will occur is when you have a failing septic system and the access to sewer is under the reasonable standard.
So, and that's, I guess that's part of the concern for me is that, and I'm thinking most of these houses are fairly new. So, you know, their septic systems probably have 15, 20 years left. If they're taken care of, it could be more than that. I mean, you know, how long is the city going to sit and wait for people's septic systems to fail, and then they have to hook in?
And they also drain northerly, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then easterly.
Yep.
So they're not polluting the area that the health department and the EPA was concerned about. You know, they're draining the other way. And as far as I know, I haven't heard about any of them being polluted, so I don't know.
Well, furthermore, I just have to say, if I'm a resident on that street, it appears these are pretty big lots. If you run a sewer, you also take my option of replacing my septic in the future. If my septic goes now, I have no option.
Or if it was big enough to put another house on and adding and putting a septic on that parcels.
Right.
Well, I think what I heard from council, and I just want to make sure we kind of need a decision, and that's okay, that at least the majority of you are in favor of paving those streets.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that isn't in agreement with that? I guess because it kind of gives us a direction to take that we'll start to get those pavement.
Well, I'm fine with the part you're saying that Shellhart was not done. It hasn't been paved, or I thought there were sewers run all the way through Shellhart through there.
Brookside to Easton. There's just a small section from Brookside to Easton that will not have sewers.
If you're at the golf course and you're heading to Easton, okay, when you go down Shellhart, heading towards Easton, it makes an immediate right-hand turn onto Brookside.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, from that immediate right-hand turn, from that point there, down to Easton, well, you're still on Shellhart. That would count. There's a White House. Mm-hmm. There is Mrs. Zenner's house. There's Bridgeway Home. And then you go into the gray house on the corner. So the Bridgeway itself, I'm just saying that's where, as far as indications as to where the houses are, out in front of that street, every year, a lot of pavement gets redone, gets more asphalt and dumped in there because it's I don't know if it's a bad spot, soft spot, whatever, but historically a lot of extra asphalt and dollars get kind of dumped on that road in that portion right there. So basically the project, the road will get paved from on Shellhart as you go down to Brookside, and then it will go to the south on Brookside. Okay. So from that point down to Easton will be unpaved.
And unsewered.
And unsewered. But, yeah, just as you go down to Easton Road, the houses on the corner of Easton and Brookside and Shellhart are going to be unsewered, as well as the houses going from Clubview. Now we're back on Easton, from Clubview down to the Expressway. Mm-hmm. That will be heading to the north. Mm-hmm. That is currently unsewered as well.
That's right.
But Easton Road was repaved.
Right.
Without pipe being put in the ground there.
Right.
I really wouldn't have any problem with repaving the streets, mm-hmm. and before we ran the sewer lines or paved it, I think we should approach them again and explain exactly what we're saying is you do not have to hook up to this sewer line today, and we're going to repave your street. And you don't have to hook up to the sewer line if we run it, but if we do not run this sewer line now, and your septic fails in the future, you will have the option to replace your septic just like you would any place else, but it's going to be at approximately the same cost as it's going to cost you now to get sewers. They can get sewers now for $11,500.
11.2.
I just had my
11.2.
septic done here 3 or 4 years ago, and I spent 10 grand on the septic. So, I don't know why.
But Jack,
I'm saying no 11.2 for these people.
Yeah, I don't.
No, I'm saying, that's what they're saying, that they're going to charge them.
No, they're not.
11.5.
No, they're not.
What are they charging them?
Because we have the right to say what they would be charging.
That's a proposal.
Right.
Well, yeah, but it's not floating.
No.
Well,
As far as I'm concerned,
I think,
anyway.
And I think that's the problem is that we can't use this number of 11.2 or 11.5 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
What is the mayor 11.2?
It's 11.2. He
11.2.
keeps saying 11.5, but
Right.
for the record,
Okay.
I just want to make sure.
Exactly.
11.2.
It's 11 something.
Okay. Somewhere between.
It's between
Yeah.
2 and 5.
Actually, I thought that we rounded it to 11.5.
I thought we rounded
but
it
I'm
to
not sure.
11.5
But it
as
doesn't
well.
matter. Let's say it's 11.450. I don't know.
I thought
what
it went
is.
to 11.5 for the
But-
first year, and then
Yeah,
after
okay.
that,
It
it
went
goes
up
up
to
500.
But the reason
currently, it's 11.2.
But the reason that number is where it is because that was the assessment that we came up with the people in Nash Heights. That does not necessarily mean that if we ran a sewer line down Little or down whichever one, that it would cost that much for each person. It might be more. I doubt it would be less. It might be more. And so we can't really tell them it's going to cost you 11.5 because we don't know that.
According to these figures that you all have provided, if there are 9 houses and all of them were choosing to hook up, it would be $32,135.44 per house to equal that total amount of the cost of that project.
Well, except I think, Jack, that normally we normally don't assess for the
No.
paving.
No,
The paving would be removed from that
Right.
cost.
That's right.
Okay.
I'm just saying,
So-
that if that's 9 houses, and it could have even been 11, depending on how you went about it.
Yeah.
But I don't have any problem with paving it.
And just a question about the paving, Mr. Fowler or Mayor or whoever. Shellhart wraps around, obviously, and it's got that sharp, it wraps around there. The section that you were talking about out in front of Bridgeway House, and you were indicating that that would not be paved?
As of right now, as it stands today, it will not be paved because it is not part of the project.
So, but as part of this proposal, that would be paved.
Correct.
All right. If we say go ahead and pave it.
Yeah, so the 126 number was high.
Right.
It was a rough
Okay.
estimate. So it's really like 115.
Okay.
Okay. And that would include Shellhart, Little, and Brookside.
Okay. All right. Now, one of the things that we really need to look at, and I may be remembering this wrong, but when they kind of widened Shellhart, remember it used to be a very, very narrow street there, and then they just kind of threw some asphalt onto the side of it. I, honest to goodness, don't know that they ever really did what they needed to under the base of that road. Would we be testing that, going down and fixing the base, or is this just throwing more asphalt on top? Because I'll be honest with you, if it's just throwing asphalt on top, it is going to break apart within the next year or two, just like it has before. And, I mean, if we're getting serious about making these roads last, then we need to look at the base, especially Shellhart. I don't know about Little and the other ones when those roads were built. I do know that when they did that, I think they just took a grader out there, graded off, and threw some asphalt down.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying it really needs to be looked at.
And that's my understanding on all roads going forward, that we test the base to see what else may need to be done to make sure that we don't reoccur the same problems.
And so I guess the question is, has the engineer or anyone looked at that?
We've not yet.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
I think
And so the number you've given us is just to put pavement down.
correct.
Okay.
And I think, but understanding the direction we want to go, that gives me clarity
Okay.
in terms of setting forth a plan to have the engineer, the street superintendent look at the streets. But if council said no, we're just going to hold off, I wasn't going to put that plan in motion without having a clear direction as to what council wanted.
Well,
That makes
personally, I think the shape of Shellhart over there is a crime, just like a number of streets in the city, and we really need to look at fixing that road and fixing it right. So,
My question would be, if we fix Shellhart and Little and Brookside, that's basically going to be all those roads in that area then.
All of them will be done.
So that'll be done, and we can just forget about except maintaining
Right.
in the future and be moving on to someone else altogether to work in their neighborhood.
Pretty much that's everything in that quadrant of the city then at that point.
all right.
All right.
And that's why I think we really should evaluate doing those 3 streets, at least at the paving, because you're talking 114,000. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But
But
it's
I,
just
I agree with Mr. Kernan. Do it right. Just don't
Right.
do a Band-Aid.
right.
I certainly have no problem looking at finishing up the paving in that area, doing it right, getting it done. I think we still need to. I still have some questions about running the sewer lines out, which is obvious from the comments I've made, but I think we can start out answering some of those questions by being very clear with the folks on those roads. This is what we're proposing. Do you want this?
Well, I wouldn't have an issue with putting a sewer in, but not at the prices they've been told. I mean, I've said it before, when they opted to get out, eventually they're going to come. But
Just want to comment one thing on the sewer timing. We're, just due to the sheer timing of it, probably not going to happen with sewers now, just because of the way the project's going. Project's going to be done, the excavation's going to be done. We have time to do the pavement, because probably not going to do it till March, but kind of one of the reasons I wanted to have this discussion tonight was to get a feel for where council wanted to be, kind of set the path, and just so we're clear, I'm afraid the ship has sailed for us to even offer them anything. So I would be doing you a disservice not to articulate. There was kind of a time crunch. We had till about February 1st to make a decision on this, and that's kind of why I'm looking at just
Well,
pavement at this point.
I did kind of wonder how we would add this on this quickly and get it done.
Right. I mean,
But I also want to verify what the letters actually stated.
I will get you a copy of the final letter, which
And
I thought
a
everyone
list.
had.
a list of where they actually went.
All right, so do we just want to
Let's
add
table
the
it.
streets to next week's committee of the whole then?
Yes, please.
That'll work for you, Dan? We'll just leave it right over till next week and address that then.
Is that on?
How long will it take to get the core samples to check out?
We're
the
going to
base?
need, I actually text Larry, asked him that we're going to start looking at that tomorrow. Again, we have about a month probably before we can even,
Scott.
where the asphalt plant even is open, so.
2 weeks, because no meeting next week, 5th Monday,
Okay.
just to let you know.
Be
Is 2
February
weeks fine?
4th or whatever it is.
2 weeks
And I'll
fine.
try to have you some better estimates, more refined estimates. Because again, the 59,000 number's not what I was given today.
Okay.
It's actually less.
All right, then we'll add that to council's next committee of the whole in 2 weeks. And moving on, Chapter 238, Public Safety. Mr. Towsley.
Thank you, Mr. President. From what I understand, the administration is suggesting that we remove Section 238, and I don't have an issue with that, but would you like to elaborate at all?
Yeah. I've been going through the codified ordinances one by one, specifically on this ordinance. It talks about volunteer firefighters, which we haven't had volunteer firefighters for quite some time. Some of the stipulations that required, no members of the volunteer fire division should be 60 years of age, et cetera. Clothing allowance. It really was outdated, and we just felt like total repeal is in our best interest because it's really not applicable to today's standard.
Some of it's handled through negotiations.
And please take no offense to this, but Mr. Markey has looked this over as well.
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay.
And more, this is not something, it's one of those things, we're just trying to clear up the codified.
Right.
It's not urgent, but we just wanted to get it before you because it really isn't something we do any longer, and we felt like if it's really not something we're doing, it really shouldn't be in the law.
Do we have anything that covers this in, like under the Swisscom in any manner?
I mean, the collective bargaining agreements cover some of these activities. The police do, in their job descriptions, et cetera. These are articulated, So we feel, according to the chief, I just so you all are clear, the mayor, Ron, Justin, and I circulate this amongst ourselves. Once we determined it was something we wanted to review, we sent it out to all the chiefs, the police and fire chiefs, asked them for their input. They felt it was not something that was needed any longer, and then we brought it to you all.
Okay. Does anybody else have any more discussion on this particular one? No. All right. I'm going to make a motion to add the repeal of section chapter 238 to next week's council meeting.
Wait, we're having council meeting today.
I'm sorry, that would be in 2 weeks then, wouldn't it?
You mean to tonight's agenda?
I could do that, yes. Add it to tonight's agenda. I'm sorry, I'm
Okay.
a little out of sorts.
It's fine. This is a little different format, having this many items under committee of the whole. Normally, we have a complete separate meeting just for that, but
We'll get back on the group
so,
here.
yeah. So then, I have a motion to add this to tonight's agenda. I would need a second from either Mr. Coran or Mr.
Second.
Gaynor. All right, we have a motion and a second.
Real quickly before we take what would the number be on that?
That'd be
3,
ordinance
I
3.
think.
3. Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Corrant?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
All right, and the next item on tonight's agenda for Committee of the Whole is Chapter 240, Police Captain, Mr. Towesley.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this, we're making some changes suggested by the administration. I guess I kind of feel like at least the major changes we should go over line by line, if that's okay with you. Starting with the Police Captain 240.02. If you wouldn't mind explaining that exactly.
Okay. So, the most significant change you'll find is the establishment of a captain's position in the ordinance. That's 2402. The position will be slated to be between the police chief and a lieutenant. You see the duties are established by the chief of police. We sent a job description to civil service, and it was adopted at their last meeting. And you can see the salary for the police captain.
How did you come up with the $1,000 higher as opposed to like a percentage? Is that just typical, or?
Number one, I was concerned about a significant percentage increase, only because the reverberations throughout. So I thought that $1,000 would be palatable, number one, and something that I could rationally come to the council and explain.
Does this prevent? I think we had a situation a few years back where we had a lieutenant who was actually making less than an officer, or there was some, because of the collective bargaining, it ended up that somebody at a higher level was making less than somebody at a lower level.
There will be several instances where that can occur. Now, that'll be solely based on overtime. Okay. Obviously, if a patrol officer or a sergeant works significant overtime, they're going to essentially be higher.
Right.
But
not as
a base
salary.
Right. As base, they'll be more, and they'll still get the same benefits as some of the same benefits as a bargaining member.
It says $1,000 higher than the lieutenant, but what exactly is that lieutenant at maximum base salary? It's all lumped in with the
I think it's $39.09. Bear with me. I want to say that currently in the contract, it's $39.09. But I can
Say again, please.
30. I'm trying to get that for you. Just bear with me here. The lieutenant's salary is $39.09, I believe, at the current collective bargaining agreement rate, which based on 2080 hours worked. That's 8 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, is $81,307.
So this would be 82.
2,307, correct.
81,307. So the captain, as it's set now, is going to make 82,307.
Correct.
And the chief of police is going to make 5% on top of that, correct?
Yes.
Which that would be a raise.
Yes.
Are we not?
So wait. Say that again.
That would be a raise.
For the chief of police.
Yes.
How much?
5%.
No, it's $1,000.
Not for the chief.
The chief currently makes 5% more than a lieutenant.
No, he doesn't. 3%.
The ordinance currently states the salary of police chief shall be at least 5% higher than the annual maximum salary for the rank of lieutenant, effective January 1st, 1998. If you're increasing the highest paid employee by $1,000, the police chief is going to get a $1,000 pay raise.
That was 3%.
Okay.
I don't think this is correct. It was 3% higher than the lieutenant for the police chief. Look up the code. You guys look up the code. Or
Ms. Whipke, the fire department, between the assistant fire chief and chief is 3%. Are you thinking of that?
no, I looked up I didn't look at anything for the fire. I looked up the police. Remember, I called you on it last week.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to check.
I thought it said 3% also. I thought the chief was making 3% more than the highest paid employee in the police department, and
Yeah.
the highest paid employee in the police department at that time was a lieutenant.
Justin's checking.
Flu and all, huh?
And it says at least 5% higher.
Can't be sick. That's right. Even when you're sick, you got to work.
That's right.
And again, I'm not. This is what was given to me by the law director, and it was redlined there. So I'm.
It's okay. We're just trying to figure
No,
it
no,
out
I
here.
understand.
It's fine.
Well, you've got your calculator there, Ron. Do the math for me, if you don't mind. If the police lieutenant is making 81,307, that makes the captain 82,307 times 5% in addition. What is it?
I'm sorry, Jack, what was the numbers again? 81?
82,307 will be the captain's salary if you go by this.
And how much higher?
5% higher than that is what?
$4,115.
Added on to that, which is how much total?
Nearly 87.
87,460.
Say again.
87,460.
7,460.
Right there.
And can someone tell me off the top of their head what's the base pay for the chief presently?
It's higher than that.
That's what I thought. I thought the police chief's salary was already more than that, so he would not be
Getting a raise.
getting a raise.
Okay.
Is that?
Well, my math was incorrect there. It's 86,432. It's actually lower, so.
Okay, so it's 86 what, Scott?
412.
86,412.
That's what he's getting.
Wonder if the
422.
chief realizes he's getting a cut and pay.
Mr. Fowler, how's our answer?
Mr. Markey texted me and indicated online. The online version indicates 5%.
Okay.
I don't recall that, but I'll pull it up again. He's talking about out of the code,
Yes.
city code.
I'm checking 5% according to the version published online.
Well, in any event, whether it's 5% or 3%, it doesn't sound like the chief is getting a raise. I'm sorry, I'm sitting back. Whether it's 5% or 3%, it doesn't sound like that is affecting the chief's salary anyway.
But it will.
It's going to lower it, actually.
Well,
In math, I'm saying.
I mean, theoretically, but you're not going to lower a salary.
I'm not going to lower salary. I'm
Right.
but hypothetically,
say at
the way the
least.
ordinance reads, that he'll get $1,000 over the.
Right.
So technically,
Right.
if he was at the 5% of the over the highest paid employee, which at that time was a lieutenant,
Right.
now it's going to be.
But I guess the way I read that ordinance is that the police chief must make at least $1,000 more than the captain. It doesn't mean just because the captain is established and that's $1,000 more bucks that the police chief gets $1,000 more bucks. I think all that says is he must make at least $1,000 more dollars. He's already making more than $1,000 more dollars, so it doesn't affect his salary. Is the way I read it.
Well, Mr. Lawyer,
Listen.
that's not what it says, Joe. It actually says the salary for the police captain shall be $1,000
That
higher.
would be,
shall-
need to be modified at least.
Well, no, that's
Could
the
be
captain, not the
That's
chief.
the captain, though.
That's the captain.
Not the chief.
Yeah.
So that would be
Yeah, I agree.
82,000.
Well, everything's based on the captain's pay now. Everything's going to be based on that $82,307.
Right.
And if you
and
read-
the chief of police is going to get 5% more.
Well, if you
according-
read
Read
E,
yeah, it's the,
the
highest
salary
paid.
for the chief of police shall be at least
At least.
5% higher than the annual maximum
does say
base.
that.
Yes,
Yes.
it does.
It does.
Okay, well, then if it says it, that's.
It does say that, but the other thing that you have to keep in mind is that it says the highest paid full-time employee.
Yeah.
That means any full-time
Yeah.
employee.
Right, right.
So if we was to have a case where one,
I just don't want him.
they had enough overtime,
Right.
would that affect this?
This is base, not overtime.
Yeah. It says base, maximum base salary,
Yeah.
excluding.
I'm happy with it. I just don't want to see him get a decrease in pay, that's all.
Okay, so moving further down the page, basically that page, we've just moved chief of police and director of public safety kind of around each other.
Yes. Actually, the reason for that was to make them all the same.
Okay.
If you look at, we tried to enumerate them identical in the rest of the column.
So no real big deal there.
No, sir.
I'm assuming section 240.05 is covered under the new
COG agreement,
Swisscom agreement.
Correct.
So that is no longer needed.
because we didn't have employees labeled as dispatchers, we decided to eliminate that.
Okay. I do have a question. The next change is F, where it says a police vehicle may only leave the municipal limits while performing authorized police duties, and we've scratched that. And why? That would be my question.
I'm going to be candid, I have no idea.
Okay.
My guess would be is because the chief drives his vehicle to his residence.
I will get clarity on that.
Well, does that mean he's been outside of code all these years?
I don't know.
I will get clarity on that.
I would say the police chief has been within the code because he, as the police chief, is on call 24 hours a day.
I would
and
agree.
He needs a police vehicle to go back and forth to his place of residence.
Well, I make that comment not to say that I have a problem with the chief taking the
No.
vehicle home. I certainly don't. I think I was clear about that last year.
As
So-
Mr. Carent has just pointed out, is that possibly why it was taken out?
I'm thinking. I think we need to revise it to allow that, for him to be able to take it, instead of taking it out altogether.
Yeah, if we could get a little more specific,
I-
that would be good.
Well, we're going to have, this is going to go 3 reads, so
Sure.
we have time to clear.
I have a note I wrote to myself and I'm not understanding it. That's why I'm pausing for a second.
The only other change would be clothing allowance is all covered under the collective bargaining agreement,
Okay.
if there's any question about that.
Okay, and that's pretty much for that chapter then, correct?
Yes. So aside from F, I think,
Okay, so because we're not going to have another meeting for 2 weeks, I'd like to just move this to the next work session so we can discuss any further changes you find.
Did you want to add it to tonight's at all?
I'm
or-
sorry, I keep forgetting that tonight's a council meeting. Yeah, I will make a motion to add it to tonight's meeting.
For
Second.
just one reading, correct?
Yeah, for just its first reading.
All right.
Do we have a second?
Yes, second.
Then I have one more question. As they're redoing this and adding this position under 234 or 240.04, part-time patrolman, and 240.05, special patrolman, says the duties of these individuals will be determined by the chief of police and director of public safety. Wouldn't we be adding, or shouldn't we add this new position in there? I mean, he's going to be underneath the chief, so if the chief's not there, who's going to be giving these guys direction of what their job's going to be?
let me think on that. There's a reason we just changed the wording, and I think when the chief leaves, he can appoint an acting chief, and when he appoints the acting chief, he assumes those roles, but let me make sure of that first.
Yeah, because I wouldn't think you would have to appoint an acting chief if we now
Right.
have a captain.
Right. But let me
So-
confirm that.
All right. We have a motion and a second to add this to tonight's agenda for its first read. This will be ordinance number 4, 2018. Roll call.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
He second.
I thought
I
Dan
heard
seconded.
Mr.
Oh,
Courant
right there,
I
second.
did
Dan
first,
did
actually.
and Jack did.
Dan beat you.
Okay.
Mr. Courant?
Beat me to the
Yes.
punch.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
All right. Next on tonight's agenda, Chapter 258, Employee Benefit. Mr. Towesley.
Thank you, Mr. President. And again, I assume that the intention here is just to kind of clean things up.
You want me to
In
go
the
line
first
by line?
section, it appears you've just,
I can go line by line if
yeah,
you wish.
if you don't mind, if you
Easy.
could just explain the first section.
So, the one thing we identified is in the codifieds, we have bonds listed that we have to buy a surety bond. Well, Ron discovered that we can get bonds through our insurance agent, and while we're reducing the amount, we still have blanket dishonesty bonds, which will reduce our costs. It's just clarifying what we're going to do here.
And if you would you explain bonds for the residents and for the new council members and why the need for them?
You want to go, Ron? That's kind of your. I mean, I can.
If I steal $100,000, the bond company will pay the city back $100,000
There you go.
if I'm dishonest.
Essentially, it's a protection of the city if someone were to steal money.
It's like insurance.
Insurance. And typically, the only people that are required to get bonds are those that handle the money. The mayor nor I will tell you we don't handle money. So for us, honestly, there's really not an interest in having bonds.
But everybody's covered by that
By
blanket.
the blanket dishonesty policy, correct.
So anybody that's been removed will still be under the blanket employees?
Right. All others under blanket employee dishonesty bond up to $100,000.
And these are bonds that the city purchases on behalf of the employees?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so then in section 25802, instead of me describing it, I might as well let you, Mr.
That's
Fowler.
fine. So we're going from instead of an 8-hour day to a 40-hour work week. One of the things we're reviewing is whether or not 10-hour days in certain departments are applicable, may benefit the city. So this will give us the flexibility to allow 10-hour shifts
So doing 410s instead of 5/8s?
in certain departments, correct.
Where are you looking at that? Are you not really ready to chat about
I mean,
that?
the service department and I have agreed that in the summer we're going to go to 410s.
I mean, for some departments, it makes sense.
So I just didn't want us to be held to this 40-hour, 8 hours overtime. While we'll have a collective bargaining agreement that covers them, should we hire seasonals that now fall under this ordinance, they will be allowed to work the 410s as well.
Okay.
And we're working through, typically, we haven't finalized it yet, but we're looking at May through September.
Right.
For the summer months to do 410s. One that gives us 2 extra hours a day late.
Yep.
And gives us the opportunity to work. So that's why that change is in there.
How does this reflect with union contracts?
It'll reflect with now, the collective bargaining agreement will supersede this ordinance. So any collective bargaining agreement that we have that doesn't have this language, they'll still get their overtime at 8 hours. The problem is if we have seasonals and they are here 10 hours a day, according to this ordinance, we'll have to pay them 2 hours overtime for every day that they're here more than 8 hours.
Well,
That's why I'm asking.
if it's superseded by the collective,
But seasonals aren't covered under the collective bargaining agreement.
I understand that.
Okay.
What I was going to say is, why don't we specifically make it for the seasonals then, as opposed to even have the conflict arise?
Well, I imagine maybe because the collective bargaining agreement may allow it. I don't know what they're negotiating right now. We probably shouldn't talk about that at this point. So,
But I mean, we're finalizing language. We've settled.
Don't we specifically make it for the seasonals then, as opposed to even have the conflict arise?
well, I imagine maybe because the collective bargaining agreement may allow it. I don't know what they're negotiating right now. We probably shouldn't talk about that at this point. So,
But I mean, we're finalizing language. We've settled.
Don't we specifically make it for the seasonals then, as opposed to even have the conflict arise?
well, I imagine maybe because the collective bargaining agreement may allow it. I don't know what they're negotiating right now. We probably shouldn't talk about that at this point. So,
But I mean, we're finalizing language. We've settled.
Don't we specifically make it for the seasonals then, as opposed to even have the conflict arise?
well, I imagine maybe because the collective bargaining agreement may allow it. I don't know what they're negotiating right now. We probably shouldn't talk about that at this point. So,
But I mean, we're finalizing language. We've settled.